Chapter 39. Leaving his parents' and his mother's secrets behind, Sevrin trotted across the field toward the meadow separating the foothills from the city. The dragon's lair was half a day's ride away, and would take even longer on foot. But Sevrin had to go far enough across the meadow so no shepherds or travelers would think Tesco was attacking again. Long before he reached what he thought would be a suitable distance from the city, he spotted Tesco's form stalking along the grass among the foothills. It seemed to be a good distance away from the city, so Sevrin decided to meet him there. It took him close to an hour to reach the foothills. All the while, Tesco stalked along the ground, head waving back and forth as if he was looking for something. When Sevrin reached the place Tesco had dropped him and Desimone off after tea, he cupped his hands to his mouth and called, "Tesco!" At once the dragon jerked up his head to look in his direction. He took to the air and alighted in front of Sevrin. "What are you doing out here?" Tesco cocked his head. "You weren't planning on walking all the way to my cave, were you? It's far to go on such tiny legs." "I was going to call you over. I've heard dragons have good hearing, but would you be able to hear me from your lair?" Tesco turned his head to the mountains, looking this way and that. "The way these foothills curve and where my cave is situated, yes, I think I would." "You out here, Tesco?" Sevrin said. "Did you lose something?" "I am looking for an appropriate place to build another enclosure." Tesco surveyed the area around him. "I should like to herd some animals. I've seen wild goats in the hills, so perhaps I should use those. My enclosure would have to be far enough away from your farmers so we don't get them confused. Do you think your town hall would give me pointers?" "I've no doubt he would once I explained the situation to him." Severn snickered at the dragon. "You're not at all like any dragon I've ever met, Tesco." "You've never met a dragon before, Severn." "True." Severn looked over the meadow. "Speaking of scouting areas, Her Highness asked me to find a place where she can formally introduce you to her father. This looks like a good one." "A meeting between me and the king!" Tesco's eyes widened and sparkled. "What a fantastic idea! We can make it a big to-do. Banners and flags and joustings. Tea for all! It shall be a spectacle. That princess of yours is quite brilliant." "She is." Severn rubbed the back of his head. "She really is. Now let's see. For such an occasion we should do it up big." Tesco started to count on his claws. "I shall need flags and banners and all the things you humans like to decorate with. We'll need pavilions and seats and a good spacious place." He trailed off, looking over the meadows. "There's a place on this hilltop which would be perfect. The view is spectacular, and it's close enough to the city. Come, let me show you." "Before we go, there's something I need to talk to you about." Severn tapped his fingers together. "What's the matter, Severn? Are you all right?" Severn took a deep breath before breaking out in a grin. "Tesco, you've done it. After all your failed attempts, you've granted me my heart's desire. Desimone, she's agreed to marry me." "Really?" Tesco gave him a toothy grin. "Then my debt is repaid." "Exactly. Which means you don't have to do this." Tesco cocked his head. "What do you mean?" "You don't have to swear friendship to me." Severn held the scale to Tesco. "You don't have to vow amity to the king. You can leave this place and go live your life in peace." "I don't want to go." Tesco plopped back on his haunches. "This land is bountiful, and you and Desimone make fine neighbors." "You need to go, Tesco." "You don't want me to stay?" Tesco's ear frills angled back. "You said you did." "I want you to, but I'm afraid the only reason Desimone will be able to marry me is because of you. I'm told friendship with a dragon can make a kingdom well nigh invincible. No king will be able to refuse it." Tesco nodded. "Very true." "I don't want to use your friendship. To use you to get what I want is just as wrong as deceiving Her Highness to get her to marry me. If you don't swear friendship to the kingdom, what will the king do? He might send his knights after you despite what the princess says. I couldn't stand the thought of something happening to you, Tesco." "Ah, Severn, you are truly a noble soul." Tesco leaned his muzzle against Severn. "Only you would think of that." Severn set his hands against Tesco's muzzle. "But you're mistaken," Tesco said, turning his eyes to him. "The king won't be accepting you because of me. He would be accepting you because of what you did. Your actions, and your actions alone, sowed the seed of our friendship. If it wasn't for you, none of this would be happening. Keep the scale, Severn." He plucked it from Severn's grasp with the tip of two claws and slipped it into Severn's satchel. It is my gift to you." "Thank you, Tesco." Sevrin wrapped his hands as far as he could around the dragon's head. All at once, Tesco jerked his head up, knocking Sevrin to the ground. His eyes searched the meadow and locked onto something. His skin receded from his teeth, and a low growl escaped from his gullet. "What is it?" Severn swung around and halted. In the distance, he caught sight of a horse galloping towards them. It carried a knight in full armor. "Who is that?" "A knight," Tesco growled. "I know, but maybe he's a messenger the princess sent?" "I doubt it," Tesco said between his teeth. "The beast appears!" the knight shouted, his voice carrying over the hills. Severn recognized it at once. Sir Galloway. "Prepare to meet your doom, vile creature! Victory shall be mine!" "Not a messenger!" Tesco let his growl raise into a roar. "Sir Galloway!" Severn rushed to stand between the knight and the dragon. "Stop! What are you doing?" "My lady's will." Galloway pulled his horse to a stop in front of them. "In the name of Princess Desimone, the dragon's reign of terror shall end this day." Severn stood in front of Tesco as if he could shield him from Galloway. "The princess doesn't want the dragon to be harmed. You heard her. You have nothing to fear from him." "She doesn't know what she wants, but I will be her champion." Galloway hurled a knife at Tesco's eyes. "Be gone, foul beast!" Tesco shut his eyes, turning his head a bit to avoid the blade. As he did, Galloway launched himself off his horse, caught Severn, and wrenched his arms behind his back. Before Severn knew what happened, Galloway had his sword at his neck. He turned to the dragon, using Severn as a shield. Seeing Severn thus used, Tesco growled in his throat, but made no move to attack. "Now then," Galloway hissed in Severn's ear, "I shall have the dragon's scale." "Never!" Severn snarled through his teeth. "I grow tired of your interference, peasant. I know you have it." Galloway used his free hand to pat Severn down. "Where is it?" His sword hand relaxed a bit. Severn jerked his head backward, smashing the back of his head into Galloway's face. Galloway staggered back, releasing Severn and clutching his face. At once, Tesco charged forward, snarling. "Corlin, now!" Galloway shouted. An arrow, trailing a thin net, sailed through the air from beyond the hill's crest. The net spread as it descended in an arch toward Tesco. "Tesco, fly!" Severn shouted. Too late. The net settled on Tesco. As he spread his wings to take off, the net snarled him, wrapping itself around him the more he moved. Soon his entire body was entangled with it. Wings, arms, legs pinned to his body. "No!" Severn rushed to Tesco. Galloway thrust his sword into Severn's shoulder. "This was meant for the dragon, but I have plenty to spare," he hissed in Severn's ear. "Take your so-called friendship with the beast and go to hell." He pulled the sword from him. "But first, watch as I claim everything you tried to steal from me. The princess will be mine, and once I find the scale, so will the dragon." He grinned at Tesco. "And should you outlive your usefulness, I have plans for that worthless hide of yours." Tesco snarled, smoke streaming from his nostrils. "I won't allow it!" Severn tried to stand, but his legs gave way. Pain spread from his shoulder and across his chest, to his neck, to his head, and down to his feet, burning as it went. His eyes unfocused. Galloway only smirked and stooped to wipe Severn's blood from the sword. Tesco gave a muffled roar, his mouth caught by the net. He heaved himself up on his feet, straining against the bond. He collapsed on the grass. "Sir Galloway!" A squire trotted over the crest of the hill carrying a bow. "Did I do it? Did I hit my mark?" "Excellent work, Corlin." Galloway motioned to Tesco. "I shall make sure you are justly rewarded for your efforts. You, good squire, shall share in the glory of my catch." Corlin's eyes booked out of his head as he approached the dragon. "This is the closest I've ever gotten to a dragon. What an ugly beast. Have you got the scale, sir?" "Not yet." Galloway searched Severn's body. Severn felt his hands pat him down, but couldn't muster the strength to stop him. Corlin watched him search. "That peasant looks in awful shape. Did you use a sword on him?" "A necessary act, and one infinitely satisfying." "The poison was for the dragon." Corlin held up the wineskin. "Shall I lace your sword with more?" "Unnecessary, once I have the scale." Galloway located it in Severn's satchel. "Here it is, the power to grant me whatever I desire. Princess, you shall be mine." Severn clenched his teeth as the pain and burning ravished his body. Everything he dreamed of, all the trouble Tesco had gone through for him, would be wasted if he didn't do something. And Desimone, he couldn't let this maniac near her. Perhaps he couldn't do much, but he had to do something. Letting his eyes dart across the meadow, he searched for something, anything he could do. His eyes landed on a glint in the grass. The knife Galloway had thrown at Tesco lay forgotten at Tesco's feet. Severn gathered all his strength. He couldn't hope to defeat a fully trained knight in combat, but a dragon would be more than a match. With the last of his strength, Severn launched himself toward Tesco, snatched the knife off the ground, and slit the net. His strength failed before he could cut more than 2 or 3 threads, but... Stop him, Tesco! Severn slumped to the ground and slipped out of consciousness.